In this episode, I draw a line, spread some glue, and clean up after myself. Come see how I got track laid on my shelf layout build. Hello, and welcome to Rob's Rails, and episode 2 of my shelf layout build. In the previous episode, I spoke about my plans for the layout and how best to approach one or two aspects of the build. One of these was whether or not to try and use a method of wire and tube to change the points, and the eagle-eyed among you may have noticed that I did decide to go down this route. This was mostly down to realising that when the shelf will be up on the wall, it'll be much harder to reach in and change the points, compared to just having it on the table here. I didn't record any footage of me putting this together, but I will go through how I went about doing this and what I used later in the video. Back to this episode though, and it was time to get track laid down. Now this is uncharted territory for me, as any layout I've tried to put together previously has never got past the point of having unfixed track down on top of the baseboard, so to say I'm pleased with where this one's got to so far is putting it mildly. I've already used a mix of techniques so far that I've picked up from other YouTubers, so putting that into practice has been interesting, and meant that I've at least had some idea of how to approach this build. So how did I get here? Let's get into it. I start by roughly drawing around the track while it's in place. I'm doing this so I can get a feel for where everything's going to end up before I start fixing anything down. Then mark around the points, so I can plan where the wire and tube will need space to run in underneath. Next I lay some cork down. I'm using 2mm cork underlay that's already been cut to width. It lifts the track slightly and will create a shoulder once the ballast is on. I've gone with 2mm here instead of 3, since this is a yard rather than a running line. I start by rolling it out along where I've marked the track bed and cutting it to length. I then cut into the cork where I've marked out the points, as this is where the wire and tube will sit beneath the track. I'll go into more detail on how I put the wire and tube together later. To stick the cork down, I'm using copy decks. It's great for gluing cork and it gives me time to adjust things if need be before it dries. Cue the perils of filming while you're working in 3, 2, 1. Once the cork is covered in glue, I flip it over and press down, making sure to follow the lines I'd drawn earlier. After cutting more strips of cork for the other two sidings, making sure to cut another section out for the second set of points, I then also glued these down and left it all to dry overnight. Once the glue had dried, I set to work laying the points. Using a technique I've seen used by that model railway guy, I placed double-sided sticky tape down onto the cork, cutting holes to fit over the wires for the points. More on how they got there later. With the tape stuck down, I then line the two sets of points up with the wires and stick them down onto the tape. The main plus point of using this technique is that it's much simpler to get a base layer of ballast down around the points without running the risk of clogging up the point blades with glue. I sprinkled a good helping of ballast over the tape, making sure there was enough down to cover any signs of the cork beneath before using a handheld vacuum to remove any excess not stuck to the tape. Then cut the excess wire down to the level of the sleepers so as not to catch on any rolling stock. To stick the rest of the track down, I whipped out the copy decks again, working through a section at a time, spreading the glue down and then connecting the track before making sure I was happy where it sat and weighing it down to dry. With using set track for this build, I'd made use of a short section of track on the front siding, just to bring it to a similar end position as the other two, but quickly realised that the fish plates connecting it to the next bit of track, as well as the end sleeper, was stopping me from being able to attach any buffers. Given this bit of track would never have anything running on it and would be purely scenic, I decided to do away with the fish plates and cut the sleeper off, using the buffer to align the track, before sticking the sleeper back down to hide the gap I'd created. The final bit to go down was the headshunt, before I made sure everything was weighed down and again left overnight to dry. know I likely get torn apart for this, but the layout is powered through these two pre-wired fish plates. The reason for this being that I didn't want to go drilling into the shelf, as ultimately I still want this to function as a floating shelf once complete, and I didn't want to risk compromising the structure within, as well as avoiding having wires hanging down underneath where they might be in reach of little hands. The plan this end is to have a bridge and embankment over this end of the layout, so that the controller here will sit hidden away within the embankment when not in use. I also wanted to leave it open here, in case I wanted to make use of a fiddle yard in future, although I will be looking at placing some sort of removable panel here to stop trains from plunging over the edge when on the wall. And so to the wire and tube. For this I took inspiration from a technique I've seen used on budget model railways and fed 1mm thick gardening wire through this 1.5mm 3D printing filament. Rather than pinning it down onto the board, I opted to stick it down, but given the tube is made from PTFE, also known as Teflon, I had to make use of specialist plastic bonding glue that comes with an activator pen. Because as you can see by the mess I made here, ordinary super glue doesn't work on non-stick material. My aim is to cover this over by raising the ground level around this area slightly, so that it flows seamlessly rather than having two obvious bumps where the wires are. Finally, I made these two little handles for the ends of the wire by cutting up a pencil, sanding it down, and painting it loosely to match the shelf, before making use of that pesky ordinary superglue to attach them to the wires. So there we have it. The track is laid down and I can now change the points. That will about do it for this episode. Next time I'll be looking at painting and ballasting the track. If you enjoyed this one, please give it a like. And if you want to keep up with the rest of this layout build, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any future episodes. Thanks for watching as always, and I'll see you in the next one on Rob's Rails.